All employers are going to be required to make a positive statement to employees that they have the right to join a trade union. We know that some unions are seeing this as kind of the time to act. Now, if that goes badly wrong, could there be loads more strikes? Well, maybe.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Insight in 15, the flagship podcast from KPMG for business leaders. I'm Stuart Burt, and today we're going to be talking about the government's Employment Rights Bill and particularly what it means for industrial relations. And I'm pleased to be joined by my colleague Tom Williams, a specialist in industrial relations and partner here at KPMG. Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Hopefully you know the drill by now that we've only got 15 minutes, so let's get straight to the heart of the matter. And I want to start first with the Employment Rights Bill itself, a key flagship proposal from the Labour government. It was a big manifesto commitment. It's been going through Parliament right now. What are the main features of those proposals?
I guess there are a few really key things for businesses right now. And I should say the Employment Rights Bill could be the Employment Rights Act by the time anybody watches this podcast. But I think the three sort of key things that I would pull out are there are some big changes to collective redundancy consultation, so making it more risky if you're going to reduce the workforce by more than 19 employees at once. There are some changes to a practice called fire and rehire, or dismissal and re-engagement, which is something a lot of employers have used where they want to make changes to terms and conditions and the workforce won't agree. And then there are some really quite far-reaching changes to the way unions are given the power to gain access to employees and then to work with them and seek recognition from employers.
What do you think are the big impacts of these proposals on business? And are there any bits that we need to do a bit of myth busting on?
On the collective redundancies changes, there are two big things that are happening. Firstly, the maximum penalty for getting it wrong is going up from 90 days to 180 days. That's a big headline-grabbing change. But actually, if the investment is done in following the right practices, in taking the right advice and engaging with workers in the right way, then the risks aren't perhaps as bad as the headline sounds. There's a secondary change actually on collective redundancies, which may be more significant, and that is that historically it's been possible to argue that where you've got a multi-site business, you can count each site as a different redundancy proposal. The Act, when it comes in, will change that eventually, so it will make it necessary to aggregate those numbers in some cases. On the second point, on the fire and rehire, it really addresses something which most businesses didn't do that much anyway. So although it will have some impact because it will remove the fallback that employers sometimes have if they can't achieve a change to their business, I think the impact is perhaps slightly less than the headline might suggest.
How do you see the balance of power between employers, employees, and trade unions changing as a result of this?
It's a really interesting way to put the question, actually. So, given we haven't seen much change in or change at this scale anyway in the industrial relations landscape in the last 40 or so years, we know that some unions are seeing this as kind of the time to act. And that could have a significant impact in terms of their approach and the focus that they're going to place on trying to win new membership across kind of UK PLC.
And all being equal, then, if these proposals do go through unchanged, would you expect to see in a couple of years' time industrial action rising as a result of the measures in the bill?
That's again, it's a really good way to think about it. The answer is I'm not sure, and I'll explain why. The measures in the bill are designed to create more engagement between employers and unions, and obviously industrial action is the main backdrop threat that a union has to try and force its position. But it isn't actually the government's aim, right? Because I think the government recognises that that's not good for business to have strikes across the country. So actually, the aim is for employers and unions to work more together. Um, Now, if that goes badly wrong, could there be loads more strikes? Well, maybe. Um, but I think everyone's hope, including all the clients that we're speaking to, is that if there is going to be change in how employers and unions work together, that doesn't lead to lots more stoppage in the UK.
Yeah. And all of those clients that you speak to, they are across sector, across business as well,
Yeah,
aren't they? So are you seeing some sectors thinking that this will have a greater impact on them than others?
so a real mix actually, and a real mix between some employers who already have unions and think the changes may lead to a different dynamic with the unions they're working with. And straight after this, actually, I have a call with an employer who doesn't currently have any trade unions recognised and is thinking about the fact that they are likely to be a target for some of the unions in the UK because of their brand, because of the market position they occupy, and because of the industry they're in is in fact elsewhere quite heavily unionised.
Yeah. Okay. And so for the ones for the sectors that are not currently heavily unionized, sometimes that is because less about legislation, it's more cultural
Yeah.
that hasn't developed. Why would the proposals in this bill change that?
So there are a few changes I think that are relevant. Probably three actually. The first is that all employers are going to be required to make a positive statement to employees that they have the right to join a trade union. Thing two is that the bill, or when it becomes law, the act will give a new right for unions to access employees. And there's a bit of a debate actually about what access will mean. It's not completely
Mm.
answered,
Mm.
right? But what's clear is it won't just mean physical access, and it probably, in our view, will mean digital access,
Right.
and that'll be really new. So the idea that rather than a poster on a notice board, which would be your classic sort of union way of engaging historically, there may be some way to engage via email or via some workplace app or intranet will potentially have a real sort of step change in terms of exposure of employees in those sectors to unions.
Yeah.
And then the third thing, which is a kind of legal practical thing, is that the rules on how an employer is forced to recognise a union, the statutory process, is going to be made simpler so that unions can more easily push for recognition where they've got some members.
So those are quite big changes for employers. What do you think this does to workplace culture and the communications that employers should be delivering to employees?
Well, it has the potential to improve culture in some organisations, and actually, well-advised employers probably see it as a reason to improve, if it's not already good, their communications with employees, because fundamentally, um, if their workforce feels like they've got a good way of engaging with the employer, their concerns are being addressed, they are paid well, they are happy, then the chances of a union being able to recruit significant numbers of people and convince them that it can do better for them than they can do themselves, the chances of that will be lower.
Yeah.
So employers right now should be thinking about what are the key concerns our employees might have and how might we address them.
And what are those concerns?
I think the rise of AI is a concern across all sectors that we're talking to at the moment. And interestingly, the Trade Union Congress, so the kind of central group for unions that looks at policy, has in August issued a paper talking about adopting AI in a way that is consistent with workers' rights and delivering better employment rather than less employment. Other things are actually they're not the issues are not new. It's just kind of what avenues they create for union engagement. So hybrid working. We know that a lot of employers have started to push more and more for employees to come back into the workplace. During the pandemic and since, obviously, people have changed their life arrangements quite a lot, and sometimes that is creating some friction.
Just looking across the board now, I assume your advice would be to plan early for all these changes, but what does that planning actually look like?
I think it involves, firstly, making sure that you are clear not just what all the changes are, but what impact they might have on different parts of your business. Um, and also what your different kind of future scenarios might be. I think a really well-advised employer would think about if it thought there was a reasonable chance that a union might have some good membership in part of its organisation. Start thinking about, okay, how do we want this relationship to work if it comes? And is there a way that we can make greater relations between employer and union work for us? The other really key thing is kind of top of house engagement with the question. Um, there's sometimes a risk, particularly I think with industrial relations, that it's seen as an HR problem. Um, whereas actually the ability to engage with your workforce, ensure they're happy, productive, working in the right place at the right time, delivering the right things, is in the end fundamental to the way that lots of businesses operate and make money.
Some business leaders might not unreasonably think this is all moving quite fast. The best option is to wait and see. There's a lot of secondary legislation coming down the track. I'll just see where the land lies in a year or so's time. What would your response to that be?
I suppose my challenge back would be, um, is that the approach you would take to other issues which could have a significant impact on your way that you operate in the UK? Um, if it is, well, then that's the way you operate, and if that works, fine. But I think in lots of cases, the answers would be no. We do some thinking as to what our strategic options are. So my challenge would be treat this as an issue which is fundamental to the way you're going to deliver your business and give it the appropriate attention.
Yeah. And on the flip side, would you argue in some cases you can turn this into a competitive advantage if you get ahead of things?
Yes, I mean I think there's a link back actually to something we talked about at the top of the podcast, which is the changes to fire and rehire. Um, if you've got a large workforce and you want to implement major change to the terms and conditions you engage on, it's actually very difficult to do that. And if your fallback disappears completely, so you can't um, force through changes to terms and conditions by dismissing and re-engaging, then a good way to deliver it is to negotiate a change with a single organisation rather than um, each individual employee.
So I'm going to end on the question that we ask everyone who comes on the podcast, which is that if you had one piece of advice for business leaders on what they should do right now to prepare for the new employment rights laws, what would that be?
I think it is uh, bring your employee relations and HR colleagues into the conversation, build a strategy around the impact of these changes on your business, and make sure that it really ties in with your future business strategy.
Perfect. We are out of time. Just time to say thank you, Tom, for joining the podcast and providing us with all your insights on the Employment Rights Bill. If you like the podcast, please do like and subscribe on all the major platforms, and we'll see you again on the next episode of The Insight in 15. Goodbye.